of China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. We have one rule. Although we appreciate vigorous debate, let's all be considerate and respectful to each other, especially around the holiday times. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. Even if it sounds like investment advice, it isn't. We encourage those who enjoy this room to please connect with us on LinkedIn, get the word out to your friends, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li, and I am the Managing Director at AITO Insights, a Beijing-based consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at spun-off.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Happy holidays, Lei. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, happy holidays. My name is Lei, and I am the former chief editor of China Auto Review, which published newsletters and the only tabloid magazine in English, focused exclusively on the Chinese auto market. Pre-pandemic, I spent pretty much 20 years on the ground in China, covering the industry. Since the pandemic, I've been in the US as an independent analyst consultant, looking afar and still trying to keep tabs on the rapidly evolving market. Again, happy holidays. This is a special Christmas episode, number 46. We had the big NIO Day 2021 last Saturday. We'll get into it a little bit. Huawei just launched the AITO, Add Intelligence to Auto. The AITO.
There is absolutely no rest for the wicked because the announcements just keep coming. It's like holiday week.
They just keep coming.
Keep coming.
Exactly. There's no resting. And the AITO M5 and a few big moves in the AV space, right? WeRide announcing that investment into On Time, the mobility platform operated by GAC Group, which is also an investor in WeRide itself.
30 million.
Yeah. Great
Wall partnership,
Motors,
basically. So
Haomo.ai just announced some big news yesterday, following their A-series A round near 1 billion RMB financing round. Okay, humongous. And they're now another AV startup unicorn. And then RoboSense announced
their spin out of Great Wall Motors.
Great Wall Motors.
The Haomo.
Closely tied. We'll talk a little bit more. RoboSense, the LiDAR supplier, just teamed up with Horizon Robotics, the Chinese Mobileye or the Chinese NVIDIA. That was interesting. And then AutoX showed off their driverless robotaxi production line. That was a very interesting news. So shall we just start with NIO Day? I guess
Let's start with NIO Day.
It's been so long that
yeah,
right?
it's been a whole 5
week
days. Yeah, so
and
so it's like old news now.
There's been all kinds of rumors coming out, right? You know, how much pre-orders of the ET5, what's going on with BYD. These just came out, today or yesterday.
That's a huge. I mean, that's a huge move for BYD. If it works out.
For NIO Day, we really don't have to get into the details because everybody, probably seen the photos, the sights and sounds. But I'll just say that the three things that stood with me was the fervor, first and foremost, for the ET5. I don't think I've seen another model launch that has gotten this much attention, maybe since the Model 3 back in 2016. The people showing off their orders, right? And I know quite a few media who attended, the KOLs who attended the event, their employees were putting down orders. So that's why, the 100,000 unit pre-order that was circulated, considering the renminbi 2,000 refundable deposit. I could have done it. You could have done it. It's nothing, right? So
Yeah.
the 100,000, I wouldn't be surprised, and I actually think that is a possible number. But the reality, my personal take is take off 2/3 of that,
Yeah.
and roughly 30,000 to 50,000. I think that's pretty phenomenal. So let's forget about 100,000. It's definitely in. I think it's definitely in the tens of thousands that will actually turn into purchases. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, NIO is a publicly traded company, so they have to be very careful with announcing pre-sales, right? Because
Right. I don't think
to
they ever
me,
will.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps build anticipation and excitement for the brand. I completely agree. These fully refundable pre-orders are more of a FOMO thing to me, and it helps you put your number in line, right? Your place in line, just in case you do want to buy it. I agree that it's going to be a fraction of the actual orders. And that being said, we won't have to deep dive into NIO Day too much, but it is a precarious position that the made in China Model 3 is now in. On the lower end, from a pricing standpoint, they have a fully featured P5. On the higher end pricing standpoint, they have a fully featured ET5 that is mid-size premium sedan. Those are going to be the three heavyweights. And because the Model 3 is almost 2 years old starting next summer, that is going to be challenging for them to get buyers to not move to the P5 or the ET5. So I was kind of thinking that through, and I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch, especially if Tesla sees any softening in the MIC Model 3, which I think they will. So I think the ET5 looks great. We don't get to see the interior. They got really aggressive with the features too. Physically it looks great, but I actually think
it's definitely my vote for the best designed EV of the year.
I actually think it looks better than AT7. It looks more natural.
Yeah, I think it's a sweet spot in terms of positioning, in terms of size. I mean, 288 wheelbase, still pretty big.
Yeah,
much larger than the Model 3. So
that's you and I are gonna be talking about that fight next year between those three for months probably.
Yeah, and NIO, I mean, they basically said the 5 is directly competing against 2 3s.
Yep.
The Model 3 and the 3 Series, which, by the way, is coming out with a battery electric version next year. Or maybe into 2023. So we'll see how that goes. But again, yeah, you mentioned the features, the design. That was the second part. So my first part, what stood for me was the fervor. But the second part is the AR and VR play. Yeah. I think that was a smart move that kind of pulled more interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in direct. I think that was a tactical move, in direct response to the P5 theater screen.
Yeah.
So if I was NIO, I'm like, hey, you're gonna just put that screen in the car, but I'm gonna go a step further. I'm gonna put on my VR glasses, and I'll have this huge, whatever that size screen, 6 meters or whatever in front of me, right? So I think that was kind of a move, exactly for that reason, and so I think that made a lot of noise.
It made me want to try to get introduced to Unreal and learn more about them. That's for sure, right?
Yeah, I guess they already have this Unreal called Unreal Air that's already been out, I think. But this is the first time they're working with the car brand and putting one dedicated for a car. So yeah, that was a surprise.
And they're just stuffing the vehicle, the ET5, with the highest technology software and hardware. And I believe that they're going to be building that services revenue because ADAS features will become paid for features in the near future for many automakers. Just think full self-driving. And so it could
NAD,
really,
right?
yeah.
NAD,
And so,
you have to subscribe to it to get the
and
service. So,
and the other parallel I'll make with the VR AR glasses, Lei, is I think you and I, and I'd love your take. You and I believe that the traditional automakers, they don't come out with these risky features or risky types of products. They think it through. But, William Li, He Xiaopeng, they're digital guys, they're software guys, they're tech guys. And so that's what you do in the tech world, right? You throw something out there. If it doesn't work, you iterate and improve and improve and improve. Because this is not the AR VR glasses. Everybody's going to be doing them, but NIO was the first. So that's and it's pulling the sector in these different directions where the traditional automakers completely feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, Audi works with a company called HoloRide, right? You might have heard of this, but it looks like they haven't, it wasn't announced like this. Like when you launch a new model and then you have this Unreal brand tagged on. But it looks like another part of it is announcing the model, and then it's only 9 months away. As opposed to the ET7, when it was announced in January of this year, it won't be delivered until end of March, so 15 months. So that also pulled a lot of interest, and that's what I was saying. There's going to be a little bit of internal cannibalization, but I think they'd rather have this than lose it to other people, right?
And ET7 is a halo vehicle, right? So it's going to probably 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio from an ET5 standpoint, I believe, from a sales standpoint.
And I guess the third part of it is just basically international expansion, right? And unofficial announcement of the U.S. market entry. There was no official announcement, but the map lighted up. So,
yeah, man, it's like you hear these announcements, and I was a traditional car guy for a few years, right? So, and growing up in Detroit, I know how they think and what they think. And I still talk to guys. Yesterday, I got off the phone with an ex Palo Alto traditional automaker. He worked at the R&D center for one of the big three in Palo Alto, and he left the company because he was frustrated because none of their innovations or ideas were taken by Dearborn or Detroit. And so, they're going to have to take bigger risks, bigger swings. These announcements that they've made, Volkswagen, GM, Ford, Stellantis, Renault, they're going to have to go even further and more often with new news, updated features, whatever. And I think it completely pulls them out of their comfort zone. So I want to see how they react in 2022 as they also start really launching cars, as you alluded to with BMW, the electric version of the 3 Series and stuff. So once they get in there, how are they going to react when this barrage of new news comes in, right?
Right. And so NIO I shared, I tweeted that they have this head of power strategy position opening in the US, their US office. So they've been looking at this market for 4 years, right? They have the San Jose office where they developed the Anomi, and some of the autonomous driving work is done there also.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think they do they have a California DMV license for testing?
I think they do, but not the
right,
driverless.
But the driverless. They're not doing anything on the roads yet. But still, right? So this work, the groundwork has been laid, right? And we're seeing this picking up traction now with the unofficial announcement. So you can bet they're exploring different options and potential partners and navigating this complicated geopolitical environment, right?
Well, you can bet because we can look at VinFast as almost like a blueprint, right? They hired a
Yeah.
comms person now in the United States, and so NIO, they probably have some folks in Washington D.C. lobbying, or at least creating awareness and giving them more information, intel. Most of the Chinese EV companies, I'm sure, have some agencies in the US that are helping them understand the market better. But you and I know that there aren't really that many great agents that are going to do them well, that understand who they are. So it's key and important because BYD is the only one that has any history in the United States. So I'm not as concerned
And
about them, but the NIOs, the XPengs, they really need to make sure that the employees that they hire and the agencies that they partner with are really, really legit, right?
yeah, and here's where we bring BYD in. Right, so BYD is already pretty much established in the US. And the recent rumors that NIO might be procuring batteries from BYD for the mass brand, and you put that along with NIO trying to enter the US and BYD already here, I mean, there's a lot to be thought of, right?
Mm-hmm.
What could happen? But I personally think that the BYD, remember, they were also rumored to supply Tesla.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a done deal. So it's just a matter of the official announcement, and NIO with BYD, same.
Oh man,
you hear about these?
That's gangster, right? BYD,
yeah,
and Toyota, and Tesla, and NIO. That's gangster.
And this is where we should mention about CATL, and that big New York Times article kind of talked about how it kind of started and expanded. And there's at the same time, there's this 36 Kerr article that basically said CATL's dominance now, there's a big crack opening up because it's had its leverage. So the types of terms that it's placing on its customers are kind of wearing off. They're kind of wearing off. And so that article basically started saying that Xiaopeng founder He Xiaopeng was in a meeting with Robin, and Robin stepped out because He Xiaopeng told him that they're going to buy batteries from CALB, China Aviation Lithium Battery,
right?
One of the second or third tier batteries. At least that was how the stories went. But I think CATL, with its dominant position, it's always had its say in terms of terms, right? Of requiring customers to pay upfront and letting them know that, the type of trajectory, volumes that you expect. But now this is good for other players that, one, that customers may not like these types of terms, and two, we're facing these battery constraints coming, especially with the volumes, right? 5 million, 6 million. So now you're going to see the second, third tier players becoming playing more of a role, and it's definitely not a winner take all game.
And to your point, Lei, that's what happens when there's competition.
Yeah.
And if we move out to 70,000 feet, if I'm a Northvolt, if I'm a second tier Ferasis Goshen, I am making sure that my game is tight. And I'm revisiting these meetings I had with the OEMs, with any of these suppliers, and I'm saying, man, I'm willing to sharpen my pencil. Just give me a chance. Let me get my foot in the door. And this creates huge opportunities for these other companies, but ultimately, CATL has still the biggest hammer because they have so much. They're building so much capacity.
Globally, they're, I think, at least a third of the market.
Yeah,
globally.
I was reading it was 40% of global shipments were CATL.
A third to 40%, roughly. Yeah. So, but then you hear about Goshen's 200 gigawatt hour agreement with some U.S. automaker.
Yeah.
Right. That's one, and then.
But that 200 gigawatt hours is over several years, probably.
23 to 2028, 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is that announcement about Fuding City, 120 gigawatt hour
Yeah.
factory.
Yeah.
That's just over the top, right? Because
Yeah.
to give people a better understanding of context or give them some context, I think Nevada Giga is 50 gigawatt hours. CATL is building a 120 gigawatt hour factory just outside of Ningda.
Hmm.
So that's just mind boggling. We're talking a couple million cars, I think, probably that can be
Yeah. And that's
built.
still not enough.
Not enough. Not enough.
Right. Basically, GAC Ion completely is, I think they're depending on one of the other suppliers, not CATL. And then Wuling does with Goshen, I think.
Yeah, and let's let's play this out. If I'm CATL, am I want to keep all my customers, or am I still need these high profile customers, and then I can give the rest, let these second tier suppliers or battery manufacturers take a few of my other customers, because they have a lot on their plate already, right? They're increasing capacity. They have most of the legacy OEMs as customers, and they're already getting pushback. And so they got to concede some of those customers, either because they're not willing to renegotiate terms, or because there are other potential customers in the future that could take the place of these legacies. So I think these are all kinds of the decisions that CATL needs to make, because they're
Yeah.
going to be a giant. It's going to be a BYD and CATL for the foreseeable future in China, but BYD is more favorable outside of China than CATL. So
Yeah, and it looks like BYD is gonna get quite a few, right? You just tweeted out, Toyota, Tesla, and now potentially NIO. And going back to NIO, the way I think going forward, how the battery supply relationship will be is in their NT 2.0, so in their existing products, the battery swapping, they'll have the CATL partnership. But
yep.
in the sub brand, in the mass brand, they probably will have BYD's LFP Blade batteries. And then somewhere in between, they still have that 150 kilowatt battery, which there's two ways. So one just came out today that CATL may be working on was it
Oh, the 150,
high nickel 150 kilowatt hour battery, and then the other one is the hybrid solid state, which is provided by the company called WeLinen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that volume is going to be small based on, I think in the interviews after the NIO day, I think either the president or William, he said, that volume will be small, and that's not until Q4 2022.
Yeah.
So that looks like the path forward, that you're going to have multiple suppliers, battery suppliers.
So one last thing, Lei, that I'll mention about NIO, not so much NIO Day, but NIO, is that it was already risky for them to stack product launches so close together, right, within 8 months of each other. And
that's why the cannibalization.
But I'm talking just from a engineering and manufacturing standpoint, right? Like,
but
from sales
ET5
standpoint.
and the ET7, I mean, when they unveiled the ET7, I'm sure ET5 was pretty much done.
Yeah.
Look at it, right? The same platform, the body style. I mean, it's 5 series and the 3 series.
Oh, but I'm talking about the risk on the manufacturing, right? Because they go from 3 products to 5 products within an 8-month period, and all this during a battery shortage and a chip shortage. So
chip shortage, the pandemic. Exactly.
The degree of difficulty was already high. And then you add in the shortages, potential supply chain issues for new products, and the compatibility issues at producing at mass production volumes, or ramping to mass production volumes. The 2022 is going to be a huge year for NIO management, because not only are they moving abroad, but they're building 2 new vehicles at 2 different facilities, right? So
Yeah, I think William in one of those Bloomberg interviews, I think he said Q3 chip shortage will, you know, be back to relatively normal.
Right.
That might not be the exactly thing he said, but first half there will be some headwinds, but hopefully better in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I think is worth noting, Lei, is that I don't think a Chinese consumer is going to wait 2.5 months for an ET5 or a P5 or a Model 3. So unless there's normal lead times for these vehicles, they'll just go and buy one of the other ones. So that's why it's also important that when you say you're going to launch on this date or you're going to deliver within 3 to 5 weeks, you better make that happen, right?
Yeah. But
So
just to recap, the fervor, the the AR, VR, and the international expansion, and most recently the battery front are kind of the takeaways for NIO Day.
And one other thing that I will mention about the AR VR stuff is my friend that I spoken to yesterday, he equated a lot of the AR VR stuff to what is happening in the autonomous vehicle space. They're very complementary. So 2022 could be the year where AR VR moves into prime time in the ADAS space for mobility. So look for that. I kind of was aware of it, but until we had this discussion, or my friend and I had this discussion, the light bulb turned on in my head. I was like, wow. And then thinking back to the NIO Day, and I was like, yeah, this makes total sense. So look for more AR, VR opportunities in the mobility space in 2022, with China leading the way, by the way.
All right, you said it.
So
mark your words.
Yeah. Anyways, what's next? You want to talk RoboSense Horizon or
Huawei or what?
Yeah, let's talk Huawei. Let's talk Huawei. Because I just tweeted before the show. I said that AITO is effectively Huawei's brand, and Series has become a contract manufacturer. So that's how I look at it.
So Huawei keeps saying that they don't want to make cars. They want to help OEMs make better cars. they keep saying that, but this is as close to them producing cars, but not officially announcing they're producing cars. Because we talked about this earlier in the month. I think it was back December. It was early in the month that they first announced this AITO brand, right? And they said they were going to do an event to officially unveil the model at the end of the month. So here it went. And on the badge, there's a Series, there's the AITO, right? So it's a joint venture almost.
These Huawei retail stores here in China are going to get pretty crowded with cars, man.
Yeah, and the word on the street is that Yu Chengdong, the consumer business and the car business chief, he didn't like what was going on with the SF5. And he said, let's put our resource into this new model. So I think they had their industrial design team involved in terms of design. And if you look at the features, right, the Huawei Sound, Harmony OS, Smart Cockpit, even some of the powertrain component front, right?
Yeah.
It was all Huawei.
The fact of the matter is, Series has no leverage in this negotiation, right? In this partnership, Series has no leverage.
Right. And if you heard the presentation from Yu Chengdong, I mean, he had some big words to say. He said, this car is going to feel like a million renminbi, like a luxury feel. And he's like, it's also, by the way, the M5 is a EREV, extended range vehicle. And he says it's powered by a 1.5T engine, a 4-cylinder. And he was saying something, don't buy a 3-cylinder 1.3 that you see on others. I mean, that's totally not understanding the technology behind it, right?
Sure,
he's like, you got to have 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, 10, 12. Dude. I mean, he was just rambling. And then he's like, the Huawei Smart Cockpit, the premium feel and the luxuriousness beats everyone else. So, Yeah.
He was being P.T. Barnum. He's trying to build
Yeah.
anticipation. And
This is not a car guy, but he's trying to be like a car guy.
yeah,
Uh,
because he has no idea what a luxurious feel for a vehicle means at all. But
yeah, and then they have this other features like onboard wireless charging for phones and tablets and things, Type A, Type C, and he's like, this is the fastest. This is based on our own technology.
mhm.
So a lot of Huawei stuff inside.
Yeah, they basically have
And
this shelf of features for mobile phones, for networking equipment, and they're just throwing it into a car effectively, right?
yeah, yeah, and here's how the press release read. Huawei has designed it in accordance with the quality and interior requirements of a $1 million luxury car with the driving sense of more than 500 to 1 million yuan. It's like, what? You put in a dollar and you put in a yuan?
It's confusing me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So it's $1 million car, but $150,000 hardware software system.
Yeah. But I think this is just an appetizer of things to come. This is like an appetizer that the main course is still coming
Yeah.
for Huawei, where they will have another, I'm not sure, a brand or a car that's even more Huawei.
And I want to take a step back. I want to take a step
that-
back because there are you and I are talking to these companies behind the scenes here and there, getting updates or whatever. But go ahead.
Yeah, remember the presentation that I showed you? I put Xiaomi and Jidu
Yeah.
in one of the four forces.
Yep.
And I had Huawei kind of as a asterisk. I think I can take that asterisk off and put them as by side as the new big three.
They're the tech play, right? So
Yeah.
but I think how I'm looking at this as well is there are certain Chinese technology companies that are still hopeful that they'll be fully embraced by the West, whether it's the EU, whether it's the United States. And I think companies like Huawei, where they're just, you know what, I'm just going to dominate the China market and I'm not going to worry about growth abroad. Not yet anyways, right? Because I don't know. The reality is I don't know if they are predicting relationships and diplomacy thawing for certain countries, right? So
Yeah.
because some of the startups are still hopeful that they can make inroads in the EU and the United States. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, right? Because you and I had talked about this earlier, that the whole RoboSense and Horizon makes a ton of sense, and it instantly makes that team, that duo, pretty formidable.
And Huawei, I think with the AITO M5 and upcoming other cars that have these high Huawei content, even they've basically done what YT Jia was trying to do a few years ago. This ecosystem thing, right? So your phones, your tablets, and it's what Xiaomi is trying to do. So they're supposed to have this, seamless transfer of content among your different devices within the Huawei ecosystem.
Yeah, right.
So that was another thing that they're trying to accomplish. That I'm sure Lei Jun is looking on the side and he's like, "Oh, we gotta hurry up."
I'm glad you brought up Xiaomi, because there was some tweets earlier this week that I think somebody had mentioned that Xiaomi is going to be really good at creating this system, and I was like, a mobile phone system or a rice cooker system is not the same as a
right. And some guy put up a video of that Xiaomi car, that rendering,
mm-hmm.
right? that went viral.
Yeah, and honestly, if it was that easy, the best in the business, Apple, we'd already be reserving our Apple car, right?
Speaking of Apple, more rumors, right? September 2022. So I guess just a matter of time.
Yeah. And my moles have told me that
we add one more into that list.
Well, that's going to be the 500-pound gorilla, right? So,
yeah.
And I was told by my moles that Apple has moved in a direction where they're really focusing on the software. So, and so we'll see how that works out because, Waymo is also more of a software play than a hardware software stack. So lots of different ways to approach the same challenge. And I can't wait till April. And then September is also when the Detroit Auto Show is supposed to be back. So hopefully,
Will they ever be back?
Well, hopefully, Lei, if it's gonna happen in September, I'll be back in Detroit. I'll buy you a beer. So
All right,
I don't
deal.
know. I don't know, but not if the quarantine period for coming back to China is a month or 3 weeks or whatever. So
No. Anyways,
so let's talk.
shall we?
Let's talk
AVs.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Which one do you want to go first? WeRide, Haomo.
Let's talk Haomo.
I don't know. The English pronunciation might just be Haomo.
Haomo.
Yeah. So this is
which is a weird name because it sounds like something else, right? So
yeah. But this has increasingly become a new force that the industry needs to be reckoned with. First, it's a spin-off from Great Wall Motor, but it's still closely associated with it.
Yeah.
In the sense that Haomo's current customer is only Great Wall Motor, and they plan it to be that way going forward
for the foreseeable future.
Which is a very interesting strategy. And what I hear from their chairman is his take is this. We have like 5 models from Great Wall Motors, which our products are already in. And there's tens of thousands of vehicles that are already equipped with our platform. But if we look at the market of Great Wall Motor itself, they planned 4 million units by 2025. And he said this is already enough for me as a supplier.
Mm-hmm.
That's one interesting thing. And the other interesting thing is, I don't know, not many people might know this, but when Baidu started out their autonomous driving efforts many years ago, they would often use Great Wall Motors Huawei SUVs as kind of like a Lincoln MKZ, right? Which a lot of the AV startups like to use. And the current CEO of Haomo is the former general manager of Baidu's smart vehicle business unit, Gu Weihao. So he just moved to Haomo earlier this year. So if you link that thread and how fast Haomo has progressed over the past few months, then, okay, you have this guy from Baidu who's worked with Great Wall Motor before. Then, okay, that kind of explains their speed. And they are actually launching a city NOH in May of next year, which will be, if not at the same time, but even earlier than Xiaopeng's City NGP rollout. And they plan to have this full scenario NOH by the end of next year. And in 2023, they're launching the HSD, trying to copy Tesla's FSD. So it's just China's speed, and sticking with one customer.
The other thing that's really important to remember is that all the hype about autonomous vehicles and robotaxis, ultimately, if the hardware software stacks converge to the mean, the algo is going to be the differentiator, but then the data, right? And for Haomo to be able to say that they'll be in 34 products by the end of 2022 and be in 1 million cars, that's ultimately Tesla's play, right? Because XPeng and NIO, they can say they have NOP and all this stuff, but they're in the tens of thousands of cars, right? 100,000, 150,000 cars. If you're in 1 million cars, that's a lot of data that sharpens your algo and sharpens your system, right?
This is exactly what Gu Weihao said. He mentioned something about Tesla's millions of cars on the roads collecting data, and they're launching this kind of the smart data platform, MANA, MANA, which has different layers and it's all about, it's not about the scale of the data, but the right data
Right.
that you can utilize. So, but let's get into the technical details that we're not going to get into. But
maybe we'll bring a guest on to educate us on the technical details in the near future.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other thing too is how Haomo also said that it's not going to just be passenger vehicles, right? There's going to be logistics vehicles, and so
one of their investors in the 1 billion investment round was Meituan.
Yes,
and they're launching thousands of unmanned logistics vehicles. That's another part of their business.
And so the big three, let's say big four technology behemoths in China, that's Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, and I would include Meituan. Actually, 5, because I think ByteDance is a major player. They are all invested in competing AV startups. So they are really, really trying to lean into that data thing. And 2022 will be the year where the Chinese government probably has some sort of say into, they've already had those 2 laws that were launched earlier this year about data privacy and data security. So 2022 is going to be...
And Haomo also proved something else, is that you don't necessarily have to have EVs to be a smart, right? The saying in the industry is that smart EVs, but all their models that have these Haomo systems are at most, plugins.
Yeah.
But they're all pretty much ICE vehicles. The way Mocha, Macchiato, Tank 300, I think are some of the vehicles that are equipping with Haomo.
But they're just, that creates practical engineering challenges, right? Because with electric vehicles, it's quieter. You don't need to cool off the system in the back, because I do remember, and it'll stand out, because we went to that Baidu depot and the fan was just so loud on the Lincoln that we tested out the system on. So it creates these engineering challenges that would go away if they eventually will move to EVs, right? And I think from a system integration standpoint, it's a lot cleaner as well. But
sure, but right now they have this big customer, their parent company. Well, I'm not even sure if that's the right way to put it, but they've got Great Wall Motor, and they sell 1.5 million vehicles a year.
And Great Wall Motor has made its intentions public about aggressively moving into Europe too.
Yeah, and Great Wall Motor has, speaking of batteries, they have the S-Volt, which is planning 600 gigawatt hours in 2025 globally. So if you look at these players, right, we talk about BYD, but Great Wall Motor is really extending its into all these different areas.
Great Wall Motors needs to get out of the trash and stop copying cars, man.
That's another thing.
Yeah, they just need to stop doing that. And they got into a little hot water here in China because they bait and switched some chips, right? So
that was the reason, or Good Cat, or some of the cats.
One of the cats.
Yeah, one of the cats. Yeah, it's backfiring on them. So
that brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.